Welcome to the Humanities Team podcast with me, Steve Farrell. Humanities Team is an international spiritual movement whose purpose is to communicate and demonstrate the timeless truth that we are all one, with the divine and all life, caring for each other and the world we share, so that people's actions reflect this profound understanding within our generation. We believe that living this truth is essential to resolving the most chronic and acute world challenges and vital to creating a flourishing world of peace, harmony, and happiness. We offer transformative education programs in personal and spiritual development, and we host an annual event called Global Oneness Day. Similar to Earth Day, which galvanized the global environmental movement, Global Oneness Day has become a catalyst for spiritual activism and an integral part of the present-day global oneness movement, which represents a profound new paradigm in human culture. Humanities Team is the only global nonprofit organization working in transformational education. Since we are a nonprofit, there is no focus on growing profits or satisfying shareholders, and 100% of all revenue goes toward our work supporting conscious evolution, planetary awakening, and flourishing at every level of life. If you'd like to learn more about us or want to support our mission directly through donation or volunteering some of your time, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org. And lastly, if you enjoyed this podcast, we'd be grateful if you'd leave us a review.
Welcome, everybody, to the Unity panel for Global Oneness Day 2020. I'm Terry Patten, author of A New Republic of the Heart, an ethos for revolutionaries, and the co-creator and co-author of Integral Life Practice. Currently, I'm leading the New Republic of the Heart social experiment in next stage, inner work, outer work, and interpersonal work. I'm honored to be joined by 5 remarkable and accomplished panelists, each of whom founded and or directs a global initiative that's bringing together people from all over the world to celebrate and enact the unity of the human and more than human family. Emanuel Kuntzelman is the founder of Greenheart International, a leader of international student and cultural exchange, and much more, and the Global Purpose Movement, which helps people align with their and humanity's highest purpose. Miranda Clendening is, with Adil Kassam, a director of Unify, which works to unify the emerging global movement for world peace. Jim Garrison was, with Mikhail Gorbachev, the founder of the State of the World Forum, and now heads up Ubiquity University, a vast accredited global university designed to help people build competencies for social impact. Ben Bowler is the founder and director of Unity Earth, a global network creating remarkable transformational events in which indigenous and religious leaders stand together for a brighter future for humanity and the planet. Tim Noe is program curator for Humanities Team, which has been convening the community behind this summit and has been sponsoring Global Oneness Day for 11 years now. We're meeting in a time that most people would call an unprecedented crisis and predicament, and that many would also call a unique opportunity in the human journey. In this Unity panel, we're going to focus not so much on the enormous predicament as the constructive, positive work that we're all doing. So I want to turn first, I think I'll turn to you, Ben, and ask you, what is it that you're attempting to accomplish now and how?
Thank you, Terry, and wonderful to be here with this wonderful panel on Global Oneness Day. Unity Earth's been on a journey since 2016 with these series of events around the world in different sacred sites leading to 2020, on the road to 2020, and deliberately and consciously connecting elements from indigenous spirituality to faith-based leadership and those representing emerging forms of spirituality and gathering in sacred sites in different continents around the world, leading to really this moment that we're in, the Caravan of Unity that just completed, Peace Weekend, and now here we are in October 2020. So the work goes forward, and it's really about continuing to build those threads of connection and understanding and a spirit of unity amongst the world's peoples and cultures. And it really feels like to us that is the original basis from which many of the other solutions can come, be it economic, political, social, and other elements. Really fostering that spiritual unity is a work that's continuing, Terry, in these times where there remains such incredible division across so many lines, which we well know. So that effort and that work of so many groups, including everybody here on this amazing panel that you've pulled together, and thousands and thousands and thousands of organizations around the world that are working for interfaith understanding, working for intercultural cooperation and understanding, and so many others right across a spectrum. And I guess our focus has always been very much in the spiritual end of that spectrum, about bringing together different elements of spiritual communities to foster a worldwide spiritual culture which honors diversity and the beautiful tapestry that the whole human family and all of our lineages represent, and where they can come together in a spirit of unity that can allow us to show up with planetary consciousness to deal with the many great and grounded challenges that we face.
Wonderful. Miranda, I want to give you a chance to let us know what you're trying to accomplish now and how.
Yeah, thank you. I have been working with Unify since 2012 during our first event, which was a global synchronized meditation on 12/21 of 2012. And we've done 46 campaigns since then that have been global synchronized meditations, where as many as 100 million people have come in at the same time over about a week's time. All of our campaigns are not that large. Only a couple of them have reached that magnitude. But we basically felt a spirit call that the world is ready to, hold an intention on really important things and do these global synchronized meditations and get people together to help see each other and hold intention and create change that we want to see. But that's been happening since 2012, and now 2020, everything's going to a whole new level of impact and engagement strategies. And we're launching some of those. Unify in partnership with the Peace on Earth game and Cool Block with the Center for Reinventing the Planet. We're also partners with Ben's organization, Unity Earth, and many other big ones in this world. So it's kind of hard to even say who you work for with, because we hold hands a lot in unity and creating change and impact. But over these next 10 years, I think we're going to see a lot of exciting things happen with regenerative community development systems and gamified impact and action and technology that's coming on board that allows us to see each other and quantify impact and engagement on whole new levels, and allows millions of people to plant a tree at the same time or clean up trash, or just have these initiatives where we're not just in global synchronized meditation anymore, but global synchronized action that creates massive change on the planet.
Beautiful. Jim, I'm curious to hear, you've done so many things across your storied career, but what are you trying to accomplish now and how?
I founded Ubiquity University back in 2012, 2013 to essentially create a new form of learning that would enable young people who are all taking the hit for what the older generation has left undone, to empower them with the mindsets and the skill sets and the tool sets that they need, both to navigate an increasingly hyper-complex world and to come together to solve global problems. And it's been quite a journey. Education hasn't changed much for several thousand years, east or west. And so we're in the middle of a revolution, I would say, in what learning means in the 21st century and what learning means in a world that is running out of time to solve fundamental problems. It's very important for all of us to take in that scientists are informing us that whatever we seem to be doing, the major indicators are getting worse and worse. And at the center of which obviously is runaway climate change. The pandemic hit in February, March. It is an ongoing phenomenon. We were hunkered down like everybody else. And then all of a sudden we realized that the crisis of pandemic was also an extraordinary opportunity. So along with upwards of 350, now 400 partnering organizations literally around the world, Ubiquity University has convened Humanity Rising as an opportunity day by day to enable people to share their experiences of the pandemic, to consider how we can increase our strategic effectiveness and how we can begin to motivate a critical mass of people to make the changes that all of us know in our heart of hearts need to be made. But the inertial force of past habituations are precluding us from doing the obvious. So I'm personally engaged in convening the Humanity Rising sessions day by day. It's an extraordinary joy to see how many people are out there that are doing extraordinary work. And I think I come back time and time again to what has been observed, that the world is getting better and better and worse, faster and faster.
Yeah, there you go.
And I would say one final thing, Terry, and that is that my observation of the world right now, particularly accentuated by the pandemic, is that there's no more neutral ground. Nobody's outside the crisis now. The pandemic has notified every person on planet Earth that their choices now count. And so I applaud what Unify's doing, Ben, what you folks are doing with Global Oneness, and all of us, Humanity's team. We just have to keep doing what we're doing as authentically and as powerfully as we can, and pray to the Spirit that guides all of humankind that our efforts are sufficient to turn the tide.
Emanuel, I want to invite you on to offer in what you're trying to accomplish now and how.
Well, thank you, Terry. Thanks for the invitation being here. I'm honored to share this time with such a distinguished group of people. And in many ways, I think we're all trying to do the same thing from different approaches, which is to really elevate our cultural consciousness to a point where we are more capable of unifying and sharing global oneness. Personally, I've been concentrated on asking people to take action for about 4 decades now. 35 years as part of Greenheart International, which I founded in 1985, which is essentially a cultural exchange organization, evidently suffering a little bit in these times of COVID-19, but certainly serving its purpose to bring people together, to broaden their horizons, host families, international travel, international education, experiential learning, and environmental projects going on through Greenheart International as they have for years. But lately, I've really tried to focus on purposeful action, just appealing to everyone I talk to and meet to explore your deepest purpose, to understand why we're here in this most critical moment of human history. And what does this mean for our soul and what it's meant to do on planet Earth? Explore and understand that purpose and then put it into action. There's a lot of talk, a lot of conjecture, a lot of head scratching. What we need to do is act. Out of Greenheart grew the Global Purpose Movement, which encouraged people to put that purpose into action. And more recently, the Global Purpose Movement, in conjunction with Unity Earth and Ben, we've merged a project called Purpose Earth, which is essentially a fundraising mechanism to grow and provide small grants for grassroots organizations hoping to take action and make a difference. It's been my view that there are so many strong-willed and enthusiastic people out there hoping to make a difference, but they just need a little bit of funding to kickstart those efforts. And so Purpose Earth is endeavoring to raise some funds to distribute in small grants to worthy organizations who want to take action for environmental causes, social justice, and really bringing us all together in elevating our consciousness, finding global oneness, working together as this entire group is our efforts interlace and interweave into a shift to the new paradigm that really includes everyone on planet Earth, going back to the deep shared values that we all have for spiritual unity. So just asking people to find their cause and put it into action, and let's all work together to get there.
Yeah, wonderful work. Thank you so much. Well, Tim, Steve Farrell asked you to represent Humanity's Team, the sponsor of this panel and Global Oneness Day. Please let us know what you're trying to accomplish and how.
Yes, and thank you, Terry, and thank you all for being here, all the faces and organizations that are represented here. And Humanity's Team, and I will say that all of us here, speaking and watching, are accomplishing this global awakening, this global shift into consciousness, into the realization that we are all part of the same thing, that we're all one. So we are accomplishing this, and perhaps we have different forms of embodying this. So Humanity's Team, we offer the resources for people to awaken on this conscious journey, to awaken, to tap into the deeper self that we all share. So we offer these resources through programs like the Global Oneness Summit, like this Global Oneness Summit. We also offer master classes and free courses that people can watch and learn perspective and science and psychology from some of the world's leaders in these areas, to just get a glimpse into what true awareness, what true oneness can look like, and how we can incorporate it into our daily lives and make it a very practical exercise. So Humanity's Team provides the resources for this, and now actually as a fairly new endeavor, we are also providing community for these sharings. So we have offered these master classes and these courses for some time now, and people really love the community aspect of it, and we've always had to offer this on different platforms, different social media platforms. But Humanity's Team now is pleased to offer this spiritual social network, which is humanities.team. And anybody who's on the social, on the conscious journey, and would like to be part of a social network to share these learnings and sharings with people of a like mind, then I invite anybody, all here and all listening, to sign up at humanities.team. And it's kind of we see it as a warm home where people can come and share our authentic self and truly awaken without a fear of entering into a debate or getting ridiculed, to create this sacred space of community. So to sum up, I think Humanities Team is doing just as we've all illustrated here, is to share and strengthen this oneness awareness that we're walking into now, Terry. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. You know, I think I'd like to presence my sense of what is happening and what needs to happen, and that is that this is a new field of study, and in a way a new art form, enacting another level of our consciousness, but also our ways of showing up, that our ways of being human. There's a next stage of human culture, a phase shift that isn't going to be accomplished. You know, we're good people, but we're asked for something more. Our relationships are good. We're asked for something at another level. And so I'm intending with a New Republic of the Heart for us to help this field of inquiry, which really proceeds by doing our best to make it happen, to share our best practices and our learnings and advance the field. In fact, we just recently published a book with our a year-long social experiment with our findings. And I think we'll have links in the show notes for all of this panel to all of the initiatives that everybody's associated with, and it'll include an opportunity to get a PDF of that book, which shares what we call the we space, that there is something happening in people's individual awakening, in us reaching another level of efficacy as change agents and really doing something else. But it also has to express itself in our friendships, even as good and rich and wonderful as we are learning to be as friends to one another, catalyzing one another. That too can go through this kind of a phase shift. And for us to become self-aware as co-experimenters in a great human experiment where obviously we change very fundamentally and very radically, or we don't get to continue. And so sharing what we're learning seems to be critical to me. Now, having introduced ourselves, let's kind of explore who we're reaching, what we see those people doing as a result, and what the complicating factors are. And in the midst of that, being sobered by these enormously heartbreaking, complicating factors, what are our senses of positive possibility going forward? So who, what are we doing, and what are the complicating factors? And I want to invite us to open up a little bit more broadly. If somebody is ready to speak, I want to invite you to just jump in.
Well, I'll jump in, Terry, and say that the who for, I think all of us are people of goodwill, of which there are hundreds and hundreds of millions out there. And therein, I think, is a part of our challenge, because as several people have been pointing out in Humanity Rising, you know, the climate deniers, for example, on one end of the spectrum, and the climate activists on the other end of the spectrum are divided by 70, 80% of the public that understands that there's a problem, but in their behavior continues to perpetuate the problem. And so part of what I think our challenge is to move from the margins into the mainstream, or we're not going to be able to make the kind of difference that we need to make. One of the most inspiring acts of leadership, in my view, since the pandemic has happened, at least, has been the decision by the city of Amsterdam to embrace donut economics. That happened in April of 2020, and within a matter of weeks, scores of cities and communities around the world said that they wanted to follow suit. Copenhagen is in the process. So we're, I think, at a tipping point where the momentum is from the margins into the mainstream, and how we then support that process, as Miranda said earlier, as we move from kind of personal commitment renewal into real actions that are really going to make a difference, is, I think, the key challenge that all of us face at the present time, because the situation is getting worse, not better, and we're running out of time. So we've got to gain the middle ground. That's what ultimately, in my view, is going to shift the scales toward solutions and behavioral changes at scale.
Thank you. Emanuel, are you?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Jim just said here, particularly about bringing this mainstream, that mere 70-80% of the public who isn't on one end of the issue or the other, kind of sitting in the middle, aware of what's going on, but not yet having taken action. And that is where the vast potential lies in this. And, you know, everything we're doing with Global Oneness Week and all of our respective organizations, this new quest into a deeper understanding of spirituality, but it's nothing really new, and it's nothing strange, and it's nothing that the mainstream public can have a difficulty embracing. We're just supporting the main human values that have always been with us, caring for one another. Margaret Mead once said that helping someone in need is where civilization begins. And so I think it's a moment where we need to rebuild our civilization from the inside out, from that vast core of the majority of people who are with us, who understand this, and who are now becoming aware of the depth of the crisis we're living in. And so it's just, a broad scale implementation of common sense here. Let's work together. Let's practice love and understanding, but let's put it into action. Let's get some real work done on climate change, on social justice, on many of the advances that are long overdue in our society today. And just wanted to echo Jim's sentiments about that vast potential in the general public. We hope you're with us. We're all in this together.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And I just also, building upon that, Terry, if I may, going back to what you said, Terry, around the phase shift that's required and that jump in consciousness. And then, as Jim said, bringing, the margins into the mainstream, and then Emanuel building upon that. It seems that the real challenge at the moment is one of resources, because so much of this work is done by grassroots organizations on a wing and a prayer, on a mission, whatever it takes, all in, fully committed. But there's not a lot of money. There are many professionals on that fringe. There's a lot of volunteerism, and that's what's got us to this point. And yet you see sort of traditional development, billions and billions and billions of dollars going into, the more the way things are done currently for development around poverty alleviation and other projects. So I think that our challenge and our opportunity, and Emanuel is a great pioneer in this space, is really about how do we fund the fringe, the transitional fringe? How do we flood it with resources so brilliant and dedicated and devoted people can be well rewarded for this work? That organizations like Humanities Team or Ubiquity University or the other organizations, Global Purpose Movement, Purpose Earth Fund, Unify, can be properly funded. Where are the nation states in driving this? Where are the wealthy religions? Where are the businesses? Now, it's the challenge has been, because you asked about challenges, is that it's sometimes hard to measure the impact. And, in the 1 + 1 = 2 level of consciousness, you can measure impact, you can do good work. But in terms of this real phase shift up, Terry, which you're talking about and we're presenting on this show, and how do we bring that fringe into more mainstream and really turn this into a global movement that's moving somewhere consciously and deliberately? It's really about funding it. And that's why we're so proud and delighted to be working with Purpose Earth, the vision that Emanuel is holding around bringing resources to the grassroots organizations that have got a purpose, that have got a mission, that are on fire for this transformation, and yet maybe don't have access to the traditional 1 + 1 = 2 kind of funding sources. And so really building that next level consciousness that can help fund the movement, empower it, drive it, mobilize it to become a truly global movement of movements, which really can impact the world, the culture, over the coming years, throughout this next decade. So follow the money.
Yeah, I want to chime in and say, as one of the original recipients of the Purpose Earth Fund, this book exists really because of that commitment on the part of Emanuel and Laura. So I'm here. This is absolutely true and important. Did I see you beginning to unmute yourself, Miranda? Are you ready?
Yeah. I'm really excited to learn more about your projects and your books, Terry, and just see how we can have more synergy in the future too, because I don't know as much about them right now, but excited to know more. And thank you, Emanuel, for everything you do as well. So scheduling calls after this to get to know you guys and your projects more would be amazing. And on this subject, we do see, of course, so many polarities going on right now. In Humanity Rising, in a discussion with Jim, though, I think Jim said it, like, as the polarities grow more and more, and as the chaos grows in the world more and more, there are, transformational, world-changing visionaries that are traveling a path down the middle and kind of finding this graceful way that we reinvent this planet as the old systems are breaking down. And the journey towards that, as we find that path down the middle and just keep going no matter what the other polarities and the other chaos is looking like, is a world that we see opening up and becoming alive so much more now. I mean, people are popped out of complacency and into awakening that we have to change. We're looking at extinction level crisis with climate change issues and reports that are coming in. So I love seeing that people are waking up and joining movements more and more. Here locally in Crestone, we have so many more people now all of a sudden willing to volunteer with our food growing projects and regenerative community development and helping take care of our elderly and deliver food and keep them protected and help make sure our youth have protected places together and learn skills and have experiences that people weren't willing. This is the kind of stuff we've been talking for a while, but there weren't that many people willing to just step out and start doing this work and holding hands and cooperating better and showing up in unity. But it's going to a whole new level of those people basically not paying so much attention to the polarities of what's going on, but just saying, I'm just going to be here and being more and more solid on the change that I can create and that I can show up for, and let's do this. And it's beautiful to see this happening. And even all of us have been part of events that have been happening since the virus shutdown happened, some global synchronized meditations, some presentations from 200 plus spiritual leaders saying what their messages are about what's going on the planet with Unify. We had that back in April, I think, and had 500,000 people attend that. And then being a part of Humanity Rising and World Unity Week and Harmonic Convergence and all of these events that have happened right now, they've turned out to be the attendance of so many leaders and organizations that are just showing up and giving their voice and saying, we're doing this and we can do this more, and we're wanting to show up and say we want to do this together and figure out what that looks like. That has been overwhelmingly bigger for Ben and for Jim and everybody that's involved in putting on these events, and all of us, holding hands and doing that together, but way bigger than what we even expected, for the amount of people that want to come in and just say, I'm here, we're doing the work, we're showing up, we want to speak about what we're doing, we want more people to join us. So it's incredible times to be here. And September, some huge events are coming too that are, I think, going to be bigger than we've ever had on solutions and what's going on with changing the world.
Thanks so much. Tim, you want to?
Yes, please. Thank you, Terry. And you mentioned before that Steve Farrell had given me the opportunity to be here, so I have to thank him for being here. And I also would like to echo his sentiments as we've brought in this concept of resources and getting the resources in the right places. Steve's came to Humanity's team from a couple very successful Silicon Valley companies. He started these businesses and he grew them to 75 million in revenue over the course of some years. And so he had tremendous resources available to him monetarily and employee-wise and so forth. And yet here at Humanity's team, where we have, 8 of us working and our nonprofit status, Steve likes to say that at Humanity's team, the resources are even greater, if we can imagine it. Not monetarily, perhaps, and not in the sense of getting the right person for getting the certain expertise for this, but we have this spiritual resource that guides us to exactly where we need to be, to do exactly what we need to do, and just to be this presence for all that we encounter. So it's interesting to have this mindset as well. Clearly, we must operate with some physical resources, but our mission is spirit, and there's a greater resource at play when spirit's on our side. We can look at all the biblical stories kind of as an embodiment of this. And I'd say that something that to address at this time, I believe that there's just so much information that's floating around, and even this concept of misinformation has become popular, and there's too much information, and what to believe and what to look at, what to look for. With everything, it has gotten very confusing if we don't have this inner compass and this inner guidance system. So I do believe that our role here collectively is to offer this inner compass, this inner guidance, so that we're not relying just on what so-and-so has said about something or just what such and such source has said, but we have the tools, we're equipped with the tools to know if something feels right or if it perhaps we can just forget about something. So I'd say that information now, Terry, is training, providing people with the right ability, the understanding of what to look for in the first place, and how to tell if something is true or not. Something is this simple.
Thank you. Well, I feel like we're beginning to get into a place where we can look at the nitty-gritty of this effort. Like we are all intending in one way or another to offer interventions that can scale, that can bring everyone together, that can make us awake to our prior divine unity and allow that greater wholeness to reassert itself in the midst of this enormous crisis of fragmentation that is really a profound predicament to the whole human species. But of course, that can easily sound like happy talk and platitudes, and this affirmation of oneness and wholeness and purpose and unity and all of the principles that animate all of us, that in a sense we have awakened, that which is living us has awakened as us and wants to enact its wholeness in the midst of things. And then, I have my priorities, and your initiative has its priorities, and sometimes we're apparently competing, and the synergies aren't always optimized. And this is a group of people that can talk about the ways that we deal with this. We're dealing not only with the doing, that's this potential for competition is at the level of the doing. We're also dealing with something at the level of feeling. I think every one of us has had a moment of just utter heartbreak more than once, maybe multiple dark night journeys as we've faced the incredible momentum of fragmentation and destruction that are our current moment. And yet we also have a kind of utterly clear, positive commitment to the already whole, this moment is a miracle. This moment is all the justification I need for a kind of unending happiness. And so there's some congruence around that, but then in the enactment, we're all in the process of a birth, which is often bloody and painful. And so I want to invite us to courageously step forward into those more challenging issues and offer whatever insights we're getting, because each of you has taken a kind of responsibility to make something happen. There's something almost entrepreneurial about that intention. An entrepreneur says, "This shall be." And we're saying something about wholeness reasserting itself in the midst of a profound crisis of fragmentation. So in the midst of that, where are the insights? Where are the new synergies? Where are the emergent properties that are exciting you and that you would want to share as we collaborate and intend to transcend what would render us rivals?
Well, I'd like to hop in here, Terry, if you don't mind. I'm bringing back something to Emanuel. You said before that it's an inside job, or it starts from within, and I think this applies even on an individual scale, perhaps, that it starts from within. And the title of your book, Terry, "Being the Change," I believe is we may all be familiar with Gandhi's quote of "You must be the change that you wish to see in the world," and this similar it's echoing a similar statement where because we are all here, we've had this vision of this awakening, of this birth, of experiencing this new way of seeing things, this new way of experiencing the world and harmony with each other. And so we know it and we can trust it. And the beautiful thing to me, Terry, bringing in this, that now is a miracle, and absolutely now is a miracle, and every time that we can think this, it's still true, because we're here now still, and it's still a miracle. And what I love about this time now in particular is that we've all been called in many ways to rest. We've all been called to kind of lay down this often busy schedule and busy work and busy life. We've all been called to put this on hold and rest. And so it's so beautiful to me that resting can be seen as an active thing, because resting is a state of being. And it's not laziness, it's not overly resting, but actively resting, actively replenishing. In this state of being, the doing naturally comes, because the title of the book is not necessarily, it's being the change, and then the doing follows this. So I love the being states that are being brought forth now, in particular the stillness and the rest. And we all have the trust that if I, individually, if I'm called to rest now, or to be still, or to sit with myself outside, then I know I can trust that this is contributing actively to this global movement. And all of the doing, perhaps it comes in the form of inspiration to do the doing, but by the time that the doing comes, then we're refreshed, we're rejuvenated, and it's an effortless doing. So thank you, Terry. Unmute you here.
Yeah, Tim. And I want to, take a breath and invite some of the rest of you to feel into some of those knottier issues that I posed in that question.
Well, I'll jump in, Terry. I would say, I went through a thought experiment some months ago. We were contemplating humanity rising, and I thought, if there was one thing that the movement could do that would be a radical transformation of the movement at a scale proportional to the way the pandemic has changed the world, I would say it would be radical collaboration. And so I want to bring that point in very powerfully. The bane of the left, the bane of the progressive movement, is that when we talk the talk about unity, we're fiercely competitive, largely, as Ben pointed out, because of lack of adequate resources. And there's an old joke that on the right, a firing squad is formed up in a line, and on the left, among the progressive, a firing squad is formed up in a circle. We have historically internecine politics, competitiveness, and almost a systemic refusal to cooperate in any meaningful way. When you think of what Paul Hawken chronicled in Blessed Unrest, that there are literally tens of millions of NGOs, almost none of them cooperating at all. You get an idea, you go out there and you kind of recreate the wheel all by yourself. So it seems to me that the central question that one has to ask is how one proactively begins to bond with other organizational endeavors. And I think I've been so struck, Ben, by your willingness to do that. Miranda, the way you jumped in, and others. And I think that unless and until the progressive movement takes up truly radical collaboration, we're not going to make it. And I make an additional point, which is tough to say because I think it goes against the grain. And that is, I don't think we can assume that we're going to survive. You know, if you look at the history of life on planet Earth, 95% of all the species that have ever existed are now extinct. Survival is a rarity. And so I think that's part of the numbness, and that's part of the inaction, that's part of the inability to collaborate. We're lulled into this sense of, well, somehow we're going to muddle through. And our sense of normalcy is so strong that, as it was before the pandemic. And so I think, you know, we're in a very tough situation right now. And, you know, for the first time in the history of science, scientists are speculating as a credible hypothesis that humanity could go extinct. I mean, we just take in, just for a moment, everyone, the amount of methane that is spewing out of Siberia. They're now talking about not 1 or 2% or centigrade rise, which would destroy civilization as we know it. They're talking about 6 to 8 to 10 centigrade rise if all the methane comes out of Siberia. And it's spewing out by the tons, increasingly every single day. So I when you want to talk about some of the intractables, I think it boils down, in my view, to our inability to cooperate truly beyond rhetoric, and our somehow assumption that the human race is somehow this eternal phenomenon that no matter how badly we mismanage planetary relationships, somehow we're going to just muddle through, I guess, just because. That doesn't make sense to me. And I know in my own heart and mind, as I come to grips with these things, I'm collaborating more proactively, and I'm more and more aware of the fragility of the species Homo sapiens in the planetary ecosystem.
Thank you, Jim. Well, we're getting into it, guys.
Getting into it, Terry. Absolutely. It's interesting, Terry, as a born optimist, you know, listening to Jim's view and that perspective of not taking anything for granted has been challenging because my natural sort of my nature is to believe that we're going to be okay and that we're going to find a way, and there's enough genius and there's enough. I love Tim. He spoke about the spiritual resources. I mean, they're literally infinite. We have everything we need, and incredible rich traditions and wisdom traditions, and the diversity of that, and the greatness upon which we're standing. All the heroes of human story inspire me to the point where that's not my natural way of seeing things as Jim's laid out. But I just want to really acknowledge how important it is to be that realistic, that there's no given, that there's no guarantee, just as Jim said. My moment really came a few years ago when I was blessed and privileged to be able to go to Greenland as part of a pilgrimage there. And we were literally standing there watching the glaciers that used to be 2 or 3 kilometers, miles high, now down to their last few dozen meters. And to hear the stories from the local indigenous people about the receding ice and glaciers there. And just had a moment there. It was midnight sun, so it was the middle of the night, but the sun was still up, and just really a moment of despair, because it was a realization of how bloody hard it is to change human behavior. And as Jim said before, even those in the middle ground, I'll say those of us in the middle ground, recognize the problem, but I haven't necessarily made those behavioral changes to avert disaster. So it's, and in between that conversation from the optimism of the spiritual perspective and the realism of also, which can also be a spiritual perspective. It's a very interesting balance. The recently published book from the evolutionary leaders, an anthology of dozens of voices from around the world, they came up with a great title, which is Our Moment of Choice. And I think that really, I'm not sure, Terry, if you contributed to that, but it's that our moment of choice feels like that's exactly where we're at. So, everything's possible, nothing is for sure, and we have collectively arrived at our moment of choice. And it really is up to us, Tim. It's up to your generation, and it's up to the people, the young people that Jim you're inspiring, and the women and Indigenous and marginalized people all around the world, but all of us really to rise, as Jim has so beautifully laid out with humanity rising. The pandemic definitely did give us a pause to do things in a new way. So many just businesses, have evolved and innovated. Telemedicine has gone ahead in leaps and bounds. There's a lot that happened, over the last few months. Miranda mentioned Jim's work with Humanity Rising and what we experienced with World Unity Week. Just for a moment, Terry, just to explain, I guess this is part of the good news, but that the barriers were down. I'm sure I know Jim experienced the same thing. Everyone we went to was a yes. Those traditional ways of, the membranes of organizations and initiatives and personalities and resources and branding, they all just fell away because the pandemic threw things into stark relief to a point where everybody was just, what can we do? We don't have time to play small anymore, right, Jim? So, what happened in World Unity Week, again, like Humanity's Rising, we had, 100 global organizations come together, collectively co-convene, something which hadn't happened before. And so we take great heart in that, Terry, that they're in a time now where we are in that new space, where things are happening in a way that are different to the old model. And you could say it's a new paradigm that's coming through, but we're experiencing it. And people's willingness to collaborate deeply, radical collaboration, as Jim's calling it. And really just to dive in the work of John Raymer and the Sign Network, as well as so many other groups and organizations around the world are pioneering new forms of how we can show up together in ways that we can't do on our own. So there's great potential in that. And then when we add resources to the leadership, we can see a pathway forward. It's wonderful, Jim, about Amsterdam and the donut economy that they're adopting, and now that's created a domino effect. And if a city can do it, then why not larger, organizations as well? So there is tremendous signs of hope, while at the same time it's wise to be aware of how serious the problem is. And yet, nevertheless, still optimism and hope, I believe, are part of our resources and definitely something we should be sharing with people. So it's great to be able to share it on this opportunity we have today, Terry.
Thanks so much, Ben. Emanuel, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on a few of these themes here from my colleagues. It is indeed the moment of choice. There's probably no more appropriate title or phrase that sums this up. This isn't just a time of large change or significant change. This is a miraculous moment. Indigenous populations have always recognized that there were three great miracles in the history of the universe: the birth of the universe, the advent of life, and the dawn of human consciousness. Three peaks and troughs of grand wave theories. And we're in the fourth moment now, this moment of choice, this true turning. Yes, it's looking dire indeed, but at the same time, we know that crisis begets opportunity, and that the more difficult the situation becomes, the more creative solutions that arise in the human mind. And so it is a call for this moment of choice, and for all of us to make the choice to contribute to the future of the humanity, of generations down the line, of what they will do. And we all have to give. We have to give our time, our efforts, our money, as Ben And Terry so kindly noted about Purpose Earth. We have to come together and give to make this happen. And then finally, all of this will happen through this concept of radical collaboration. I was honored to be part of the Humanity Rising panel on radical collaboration. And what was really described there was this readiness to give up and give to open source, to work together as life itself does. We are a cooperative and collaborative species by nature. Social Darwinism has tricked us into thinking that we're competitive and we're fighting for survival. But what we're really seeking is the deepest, most profound cooperation we can find. We don't need to reinvent any more wheels. The wheel of the holo movement of the global cooperation is already set in motion. We just need to each add a little grease so that we can make it flow and move forward. But it is a time of choice, of true deep commitment. There's no more just living on and hoping we'll muddle through. This is a time to recognize that we're in the midst of the fourth greatest miracle in the universe. We were born here for a reason. Our purpose is to aid and get us through this greatest challenge in history. So when we see it in that perspective, I think there's a great deal of optimism, because the energy and the force to radically collaborate and put ourselves together as a humanities team overcomes our initial egoistic desires to look out for ourselves or our own best interests. So it's a great momentary vision of new exploration in human consciousness, where radical collaboration can take us to a higher level of understanding and working together. And we will solve this, but we need to recognize the gravity of the situation and therefore energize ourselves all that much more to take care of things.
Thank you. Well, I've been waiting to hear from you on this, Miranda.
Yeah, I was about to speak and just say, I'm deeply touched by all of you and your speaking, and thank you, Emanuel. And I just second everything that you just said too. I really believe I've grown up with the teachings and feel lucky to have had parents that kind of led me in the belief that we're coming into a paradigm shift and that we're going to see the greatest miracle of transformation that's ever happened on the planet. And my whole life I've been looking for the signs for that, which has been a beautiful life's journey of watching the interfaith movement and how it's unifying people of different religions towards greater causes and working together, and just seeing that whole blossom and flourish that entire world. And just so many different pieces with Unify. We publicize positive change and solutions going on the planet, but it has gotten so big that it's like the biggest thing we can publicize now is that a huge renaissance is already going on, and that so many people are so awake and creating new communities and new energy systems and ways to help fix pollution, and all these solutions are out there, but it does take a massive amount of people to wake up more to doing their part with that. And as you were saying, giving what you can, giving of your time, going and researching solutions you can do to change your life more, change our behaviors if it's harming the planet, change how we work with each other in radical collaboration, like really, really show up in that. And we see it's not always pretty. We see egos clash with each other. We see, the more people we put in a room together to collaborate on a subject, the more conflict you're actually going to see as people say, I have the best solution. Learning how to radically collaborate is not something humanity has learned how to do very well yet, but we keep showing up in that experiment, and many more people need to do that as well. We use nonviolent communication techniques, restorative justice to handle conflict, and being willing to welcome conflict and see the dynamic tension that forms between egos and different personalities as they bring things that really matter and need to be heard, but finding the middle ground or finding ways that both can be heard and exist, and we move forward with cooperation and unity as the biggest energy force on the planet that will create the change. The biggest new energy to be harnessed is all of us working together and in unity. It's a massive force that has only just begun. The solutions are out there, but the implementation, the awakening, the education, and the holding hands together is where we're going in this next new age that creates the largest paradigm shift and miracle to happen. And so many young people are on our team. I love, Tim, that you're here and so awake and brilliant and speaking as you do. And we've got kids as young as 6 years old in our community that can speak on YouTube and talk about the world that they want to see, and are helping build earth bag buildings and growing food in the garden with us, and tons of teenagers, and just 25% of the world's population is below, or more than 50% of the world's population is below the age of 25 right now on the planet. And every kid and youth and young adult, desperately feels the need for a future, obviously, and our planet to have a future. And all of us holding hands, no matter what age we are and what we can contribute and do, but showing up and having a voice. If you're a grandparent, you're a parent, no matter what age you are, just saying, I'm here with you. I'm here for a future. What are we doing? What do we want to do? And let's just do this on whole new, beautiful, collaborative levels. And it's exciting to see that happening in our communities and, our unified networks growing larger and larger. But keep going whatever we can to do that. It's hard to know how to even combine so many solutions and organizations into one. All of it's an experiment of learning how to do that, but we're going to keep going.
Thank you so much, Miranda. As I'm hearing everybody's responses, I'm finding myself appreciating that in some sense, we're having, these challenges are requiring us to go deeper into something poignant and paradoxical. Like we are sobered more and more and more. We see all of the fragmenting, egoic, competitive, rivalrous dynamics. We appreciate that we are already so far gone in terms of climate, in terms of a whole tangle of crises that are interwoven. The world financial system, you can name any of literally a dozen systems that seem to be at the edge of an apocalyptic unraveling. And we're pressed beyond our easy answered positivity to something deeper. We're taken deeper by that grief into a more radical gratitude and a more radical willingness and a more radical generosity that makes something like this kind of radical collaboration possible. That we can learn to be better friends, better allies to one another, so that our way of being with one another, our listening and our contributing, build these virtuous circles, the opposite of a vicious cycle in which everyone is strengthened. And that this is an aspect of how we want to live this human moment, even if it is an apocalyptic moment. That in a way we're all building a cathedral that we won't live to see be completed. And that cathedral may even have to transcend our species. This not taking for granted that we will make it through, hopefully makes us so profoundly grateful for these moments and interested then to be generous in it, generative in our generosity in an even a new way. So I'm curious if, as we've gotten into this territory, there are insights or things that you've discovered in your own hearts that feel important to presence and to speak to as we're on the edge here, vulnerable, tender, caring, already doing much that's good, but reaching now for something that seems almost impossible. And yet affirming that the whole history of evolution has been miracle after miracle after miracle. And so we don't know what the future will bring.
I'd like to say, Terry, and thank you for this. Is beautiful, and everybody, this is beautiful. Thank you for coming together for this. Bringing back, Ben has brought in this concept of the 1+1 economics, or the 1 + 1 = 2 way of seeing things, and in that way of seeing things, the 1 + 1 = 2. Everything is apocalyptic. Everything is going to trash, and the numbers are not working for us in this way. The numbers that we have come to rely upon no longer work, and so everything in that perspective is going down the drain. And yet spiritually, things have never been clearer. That spiritually, people are awakening. Spiritually, inner peace-wise, that we can tap into this clarity, this knowingness that this is all on plan, and kind of being okay with the swirling down the drain and the disintegration of all that we've known, but being comfortable and trusting, knowing spiritually that when we're silent, that we can tap into this joy and exuberance of awakening together, collectively. And the one insight, Terry, I know you asked to share insights with this, that I think we'll get a kick out of is, traditionally, humanity has marked our progress by technology. We entered recorded the start of recorded history, when we started to write things down. The Stone Age, the Bronze Age, and the Iron Age, and so forth, and the Internet, and that was before cell phones existed. And I think for the first time, we're entering this new age of spirituality, where we can say, after some years, that, that was before the Great Awakening. That was before we had collectively realized or recognized our oneness. And so it's interesting that we're kind of shifting. I get the sense that we're shifting from this technology-dominated perspective into this, mindfulness and spiritually perspective, where we all can, I forget who said you can't quite measure these things often. I think Ben said this. And we can't quite measure this, but if we're in tune with it, I think we all know that there's a profound shift happening. So just one insight that I'd like to share, that I'm pleased to share. Thank you, Terry.
Terry, if I can jump in and just say, Tim, you're amazing. It's really, Tim, you're inspirational. Your grasp of the current unique moment in all, not just human evolution, but the whole cosmic evolutionary moment we're in is extraordinary. And that absolutely, if we're looking at it through the rational lens of of our of what we thought was the best of ourselves, then we have very grounded reason to despair and to spiral into depression. But as you said, Terry, as well, in framing this whole thing, that we're looking for this phase jump. Even what we thought was our best hasn't been good enough. So how do we? Haile Selassie said we need to become something we've never been before. When addressing the United Nations in 1963, we need to become members of a new race. So that process is upon us, and the embracing of that transformational process with optimism, with realism, with enthusiasm, with humility. It's interesting because, the framing of integral theory is fantastic and offers some great maps, and the waking up and growing up and cleaning up and showing up and linking up and lifting up and all this stuff is great. But for me, it's where's the bowing down? And if we're really going to get through this, it's going to be from bowing down, by really coming into relationship with authentic spiritual reality, by whatever framing makes sense or feels right. But it's really that entering into the essence of we're not alone. We were never alone. We are not in this by ourselves. We are surrounded by a vast cosmic force for good that lives within us and is all around us all the time. So having started in optimism, which is naive, and then entered into the realism of the world, we then come out with a renewed hope based upon a broader perspective, a bigger view, a cosmic view of who we are and who each other are in this world. So I feel that is, and Tim spoke about that so beautifully as well, there's a spiritual road out of this, and we're all walking it together. Thank you. Thank you, Terry. Mm.
Jim, would you like to lean in to this phase of the conversation?
Yeah, I think there's an old Polish saying that to be defeated and not surrender, that is the victory. And I obviously live a life of optimism and hope day by day, but I think, the accumulated trauma, the transgenerational trauma is so deep. I speak in some ways as an American watching the United States of America in an accelerated process of disintegration. The United States has become a failed state, and almost by any measure, a country that was sort of the light on the top of the hill several decades ago is now become an international embarrassment. And when one thinks that even given the catastrophic failure and incompetence and corruption of the Trump administration, that he's supported by 40 to 42% of the American people, and that support is not eroding, one has to temper one's personal optimism against the bedrock of the reality. And let me give you a quick story from my Gorbachev days. We were in New York. He was giving a lecture on various topics at the Council on Foreign Relations. During the question and answer period, the first question was asked by Henry Kissinger. And Kissinger asked a very simple question of Gorbachev. He said, "Why did you fail?" And at first, Gorbachev was taken aback by the question. And then he laughed and he says, "Well, I'm writing my biography to find out." Because Gorbachev was overthrown. And then he paused and he said, "I failed because I did not analyze reality ruthlessly enough. I was too optimistic." And I think this is a moment in my mind where we have to be careful against naive optimism. And we need to really take in that Mother Nature is taking us out. You know, if you ask any of the species on planet Earth right now, would the Earth be better off with or without the human race? By unanimous consent, the world species would say that the human race has become a toxic virus on the ecology, on nature, the way we treat each other, our relentless cruelty for the sake of cheap consumerism. So I think the pandemic needs to challenge us as much as the elites. And unless and until we're analyzing reality as ruthlessly as we need to, I don't believe we're going to make any difference. And right now, we're not making any difference. We have a lot of stories, and we feel good, and we do these events, but we're not making any difference in the objective situation. And that's what's true. Climate change is spinning out of control. The Arctic Circle is experiencing record heats, not for a day or two, but for over a month now. And scientists after scientists are saying, we've passed the point of no return. And yet we kind of keep doing everything as if nothing has changed. And isn't that the definition of insanity, where you keep doing the same things over and over, expecting a change, and then nothing changes? So I don't want to dilute the optimism, but I want us to use the occasion of the pandemic and the daily news about climate change as a referent to make sure that we're engaging in the kind of ruthless realism that's required for truly revolutionary action. And I don't believe we're there yet. And so one of the things that I'm agonizing with our team here at Ubiquity and Humanity Rising, what more can we do? Can we do something differently? How do we analyze reality more ruthlessly? I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that what we're currently doing is not making the necessary difference to change anything in a substantive way. And let me just close by an example from an old friend of mine, Alan Slifka. He's deceased right now. He was a very wealthy hedge fund operator in New York. He gave millions and millions of dollars to improve Jewish, Arab, Palestinian relations. And then, as you all know, in 2004, Ariel Sharon stormed the Temple Mount and ignited the Intifada. And Alan Slifka died a broken man because he saw everything he worked for washed away. And he said to me long before he passed, he said, Jim, I didn't analyze reality ruthlessly enough. I kept thinking I could just pour money and the whole situation was just going to get better. It didn't. So I just want to bring in that counterpoint, not to dilute the optimism, as I said, not to dilute any of the enthusiasm, because I agree with what everybody's saying and I'm participating in it as well. But I think there's a deeper layer of self-discernment that the progressive movement has yet to go through.
Well, that's a grounding and ruthlessly sobering reorientation. And it's interesting, I'm finding myself thinking back to how Ben completed his recent communication about bowing down and the sacred.
Yeah.
I don't know that this, I feel like the sobering reality that we're facing puts my forehead on the ground. And perhaps in that spirit, I want to invite Miranda and Emanuel, who haven't spoken yet, and to this question to enter the conversation.
Yeah. As I mentioned a little bit before, I am hardcore on the path for helping try to figure out what it means to actually collaborate for impact and engagement on a very, very large scale, behavior change at scale, solutions at scale. And I never stop working for that, anyone who knows me. And our organizations are seeking that. We've run many experiments on how we bring in a lot of leaders and collaborate and try to implement solutions, try to have big fundraisers, try to make the most difference possible. And now we're in a whole new level of that, where we have more people than we can handle saying yes to wanting to do that, but we still don't have the technologies and the funding, the resources, or even the collaboratory processes to handle something that big yet. But humanity is majorly saying, we know that it's going to take whole systems transformative change and everybody coming together to create the quick accelerated evolutionary response to what is going on right now in order to create this change. So we're working on that, looking for that, and we need to hold hands on that and not stop. Humanity Rising is, an experiment that you guys are doing, day 75 or something like that, of letting solutionaries present about what could be in the world in all these different subject areas. But Unify's been searching for technology that can help us to see each other, to help quantify impact and action, to help launch very big synchronized action events. And some pieces of that technology are coming along, but I think in the next couple of years, we have a blueprint of what we know we need to see and what needs to start happening as far as seeing what needs to change in the world, seeing each other and who can create change as far as organizations, partners, what resources are needed, and how we involve the average everyday public and civilian engagement in these larger conversations and change. But it is an experiment, and we're very much on the emergent edge of realizing that it is going to take the whole planet and as much of us awakening and resources and whole systems change on a level that we have not even tried to step into tackling yet. It's a beautiful challenge, crisis, and problem to have right now, to have so many people showing up and finally saying, yes, we need this on a much larger level. What is creating impact? Where are the resources needed? Where do we get them from? How do we funnel them there? And how do we put out the big call to all the people of, we know we need to do this now, and we're all going to do this until we create that change. But I wholeheartedly believe, I am an optimist and an idealist. But I mean, the world we live in is so real. The challenges are so real and in your face and affecting our families and our future and our planet's future so hugely that it's not stuff that you can ignore. And continuing to travel the path, we have to do that. But how we really truly do that, and having the technology and the media output and the storytelling and the onboarding of so many groups and leaders and people and the resources to do that, is our next big hurdle and challenge. And that's just, I feel like, just to the next level this year, about people really searching for, how do we put 300 organizations together to clean up the ocean together, or to plant trees together, or trash together, or take care of our youth, make sure everybody's fed, together? How do we do that with thousands? How do you start by having 200, 300 organizations and hundreds of thousands of people? Then how do you go to thousands of organizations, millions and millions, all into these things and have the wisest minds in there, see the greatest solutions, and really quantify and track the impact and change when you're getting so many yeses from so many people? That's the experiment we're in now.
Mm.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on all the wisdom that has been conveyed here. You know, as far as a new insight goes, one's been growing in within me for a long period of time here. I was under the assumption that maybe it had something to do with aging, that if one has lived long enough, you lose your attachments to the material world and you maybe become more insightful and more determined and more committed because you don't have that much to lose materialistically, age-wise anymore. But having heard Tim speak here about the spiritual awakening, I think maybe it doesn't have anything to do with age. It's just a spiritual awakening. And it's maybe the realization that although we've been fooled by the materialistic paradigm to think that we are physical beings occasionally having spiritual insights, the truth of the matter is we are spiritual beings experiencing a brief and transitory human incarnation. And when we really take that awareness that we are timeless spiritual souls brought here for a very deep purpose in this most critical moment of history, and we're placed here, then it really sinks in. And it is that spiritual awakening. And no matter how ruthless reality is, and it is, and no matter how poor our progress has been, and it is, inside that spark of true spirituality that makes us so much more than individual physical incarnations, that makes us fuse with the spirit, not only of humanity, but the spirit of the universe, the whole conscious being that grounds everything we're doing. And when we feel and sense ourselves as part and parcel of that love consciousness, and we convert that into determination, commitment, that this is so big, so purposeful, so beyond any little minor, silly little body that we're inhabiting right now. This is about the purpose and the future of the experiment of consciousness in the universe. And we're here to preserve it, curate it, and let it live on into the future. There's no bigger lesson, no more humbling thought than that we're here to serve. And let us all reflect deeply on that. Let us generate that insight in the depths of our heart and the heights of our souls. And let us become those divine spiritual beings that we are and put it to work, full force, with action, with money, with effort, with radical collaboration, together, arms linked in love, to get us through this critical moment in history, together as one in global oneness.
Beautiful. Thank you, Emanuel. Wow. You know, it feels as though we have arrived at a place where, in a sense, that prayer opens us up to what will be the last words I want to invite from each of the each of you in this panel. And they might take the form of a prayer. They might take the form of a declaration or an invitation. I want us to notice the incredible power and vividness of the divinity of this moment in this conversation, of this moment in the human journey. The sobering, ruthless examination of our predicament. The opening in surrender to what will be, even if that is a series of endings and a fair amount of suffering. That willingness to love and to serve, no matter what, in the midst of it all. That feels like the space that we're inhabiting. Out of that, there is a field of learning to be love in action that we are all practitioners of. So I want to invite each of you to speak whatever words you'd like to as we bring this to conclusion, just for a minute or so each. So, Jim, would you be willing to lead us off in this last round of sharing?
Yeah, I found, Emanuel, what you said profoundly illuminating. I think for me, the power of coming to understand that we are not human beings separate from nature, but that we are nature. We are the earth. The earth created us for a purpose. And our purpose is to understand what she wants of us at this moment. Fills me with a very profound gratitude that I was born at this extraordinary juncture in human history, where our choices, both individually and collectively, are going to determine quite literally the fate of humanity on Earth. And I am inspired by that. And even though I'm searching as deeply as I can the layers of the pandemic and how we can improve our strategic effectiveness, it's within this question of what is real that my sense of purpose is being renewed day by day as I fathom what the earth requires of us at this moment. Because even this conversation is the earth speaking with itself.
Yeah.
Why is she doing this through us at this moment? And living in this question, I find delicious and inspiring and grounds for deep gratitude and hope. And so I just want to thank you, Terry, for convening this conversation. I trust my questions haven't too destabilizing. They were asked in the deepest love for all of us, for humanity, and for the earth who produced us.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Jim. Oh. Tim, would you like to say?
I'd be honored to, Terry. And
yeah.
Well, I'd just like to thank you for sharing, Jim, and I'd like to say to you, you brought in how you continually ask, what more can I do? And I have to assure you that there's no more you can do, that you are contributing fully already. We can't contribute more than fully, and you're contributing fully. And this goes for all of us here, all of us watching and participating. So I thank everybody here. And I think Miranda has put it so nicely that we have to be hand in hand through this all, and changes that may be unforeseen and how everything unfolds, that we ensure we're interlocked hands to be a part of this greater collective organism that's greater than any one human itself.
Thank you, Tim. Miranda, would you? Speak.
Yeah. I was taking notes on people's prayers and declarations because it's so beautiful, and I just we are all interlocking hands in this greater organism, and I do think so much of it does come down to a simple vow and a declaration of all people, all in for all life. Love each other to the best of your ability, radically collaborate, radically open source and decentralize. Say yes when you're asked. Keep showing up. Do it in your local community, do it in your family, do it in your transformational journey as you're being asked to soften and be on your knees and be brought to your head on the floor and asking for guidance. And just keep going, just keep showing up and have faith and hope that we are the ones. We are the ones to, if anybody's going to make it through all of this and bring the change, we're here, we're doing it, we're not going to stop. And there's so many of us. Just be big love, hope, faith, inspiration to everyone around you. Just keep going.
Thank you for that blessing, Miranda. Beautiful. Ben.
Yes, Terry, thank you. Thank you for bringing together such coherent and complementary voices in this very rich field of discussion. It's been a privilege and invigorating to be here. We're told in scriptures that the Most Highs rule in the kingdoms of men. And to Jim's excellent point, when we ruthlessly analyze reality, you can't help but come to the conclusion that in order for us to fulfill all of these collective dreams and ambitions and hopes that we carry, we need a regime change on this planet. And so my prayer is, I pray for a regime change in our hearts. I pray for regime change on our planet. And as we collectively rise, as Miranda has talked about, and Jim and others about the numbers, we have the numbers. And so showing up together so that this planet can be ruled wisely in a human sense by serving all of life and by reordering our way we understand our relationships. And then wisdom can reign and love can rule planet Earth.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ben. Emanuel, please.
A few weeks ago, I ran across a quote by Mother Teresa. And the nature of the quote was, allowing yourself to feel overwhelmed by despair or hopelessness is an immoral attitude. And when we talk about this new spiritual awakening and a new morality of us all being in and working together, I think those words of Mother Teresa ring very, very true. We can't allow ourselves to be overwhelmed by ruthless reality. We only take that as the call, the challenge, and it gives us energy to fight back with love and commitment and compassion for the better world that we know is coming. And then, rather than feeling hopeless or in despair, we feel honored to be here, to have that moral standing, to go forward with all the love in our hearts to make this a better world and know that we have served our purpose to be part of this great transition in this unique moment in history. So enjoy it. Feel the joy in your hearts. Don't let it get you down. Use that energy for the greatest comeback ever when humanity rallies to the cause, to the higher calling, and we show history what we're truly made of. And thank you, Terry, for this convening and your guidance of the group. It's an honor.
Oh, brother, that was beautiful. Well, I think my words in closing are just a heart full of thanks to this unknowable source of grace who is living me and living you and speaking through all of these different hearts and mouths and enacting as much benefit to everything that is healthy and whole and evolving in this whole human and more than human world. And with that gratitude, I feel like we are a lightning rod for that spark of emergence to work its miracles as best it can, and utterly glad to give our lives in service of what wants to emerge, no matter what happens. So I want to invite everybody who's here, us on the panel and everyone listening, to relax and open into what's most real, our non-separate identity, letting ourselves be lived consciously by the conscious light of our prior unity. May we breathe and let ourselves open into the beauty and the radiance and love of God, and feel invited into the recognition that all of our apparent problems and predicament, even everything that is so daunting and heartbreaking and apparently consequential, does not threaten our divine nature. So I want to thank you, each of you on this panel, and all the folks at Humanities Team who work on this Global Oneness Summit every year and all year round, and each of you, the viewers and the people participating in this summit. Together, we're resonating coherently as wholeness. In some way, we're each co-enacting some of the preconditions for evolutionary emergence. And we're coming together as a sober and grounded and caring response to the impossible questions that we're holding. And that's something we can only do together. So before we close, we're going to be silent together for 10 seconds to center ourselves in oneness with the divine and one another. This is called a oneness moment. And we're going to begin our oneness moment right now.
If you'd like to receive all of our new podcast episodes, please click on the subscribe button. To find out more about Humanities Team transformational education programs and about how you can help support our mission, please visit us online at humanitiesteam.org, where you can also sign up for our email list so we can let you know about our free online events and other news about what we're up to each week. And again, if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review. Thank you.